Robert Johnson. The first time I met little Harley, I immediately felt that she was a very honest child. Her marble-like eyes didn't waver as she looked at me, and when Harley repeated my name after hearing it just once, I thought she was a smart kid. Those were the two impressions I had of Harley. That's right, my name is Robert Johnson, and this woman is Natalie Johnson. She's my wife. Harley glances at Natalie, who is standing behind me. Are you and Natalie married, Robert? That's right. So, are you trying to become my daddy and mommy? Too perceptive. I think I unconsciously widened my eyes in surprise. Seeing my surprised expression, Harley explained why she sensed that. Here at the facility, kids who are given a chance to talk to married couples usually successfully get adopted afterwards, she said, looking down a little. You understand what adoption means? That's amazing. When I said that, Harley shook her head slightly. I don't really understand. It means leaving the facility and becoming someone's child. I let out a small groan. I couldn't say that Harley's definition of adoption was wrong, but I felt that if I affirmed it here, there would be some kind of misunderstanding. As I was confusing how to reply to her, Natalie approached from behind me. Natalie crouched down in front of Harley, meeting her gaze. Looking straight into Harley's eyes, Natalie slowly opened her mouth. It's not that adults selfishly take a child away. When a child living in a facility truly feels that someone is a person they can feel safe with, that's when they take the first step to becoming a family. That's what I think adoption means. Upon hearing Natalie's words, Harley likely took plenty of time to think. I believe she was trying to determine if Natalie and I were adults she could feel safe with. The music room at the foster care facility where Harley had been living had become Harley's room. The director said that Harley was the only one who used the music room, which only had an old grand piano with peeling paint here and there. Natalie and I got married right after graduating from the same university. It was an unwavering fact that I would take over the furniture company my father had founded. Meanwhile, Natalie, knowing that she has infertility due to a chronic condition, refused to marry me. Natalie tried to convince me that our relationship would only last while we were university students, but the more time I spent with her, the less I could imagine spending my future with any other woman. By the time I graduated from university, I no longer had any intention of marrying anyone other than Natalie. Even if it's not a child I give birth to, I promise to love them with all my heart. Before submitting our marriage registration, Natalie and I linked our pinkies and made that promise. I had decided in my heart that I would cut ties with my family, especially my father, if he persistently opposed my marriage to Natalie, but he surprisingly readily welcomed our marriage. And so we came to the foster care facility in search of possible candidates for adoption. First, we met with the facility director and discussed the children staying there. Then she implicitly set up a barrier, saying, "Okay, that's all you should know. Though if you're still willing to become parents to the children at this facility, please feel free to call us again." I felt as if she was trying to imply that Natalie and I were both immature and lacked commitment to be adoptive parents. Someone's playing the piano. On the way to the entrance, Natalie raised her head that had been hanging down. Then, like a cat lured by a delicious scent, she turned on her heel, drawn by the faint sound of piano music. In the center of the lonely music room where the evening sun streamed in, a girl was playing the piano. "You're good at piano." When Natalie spoke to her, the girl stopped playing. "May I ask your name?" "I'm Harley. I'm 7 years old." "Oh, but I'll be 8 this year." For a while, the director and I watched Natalie and Harley gazing at each other. It was around the time when the evening sun had half sunk and indigo was seeping into the sky. The director, clearing his throat, moved my body. I gave Harley my name and Natalie's, and Natalie looked into Harley's eyes and explained what adoption meant. I felt happy that I was able to marry Natalie, and I could vividly imagine a future where we welcomed the girl in front of us into our family. I envisioned a home where Harley, Natalie, and I would laugh together. Harley, who had been repeating my and Natalie's names in a small voice, "Robert Johnson, Natalie Johnson," slowly raised her face. "Do you have a piano at your house?" From that day, Natalie and I began to visit the facility regularly for a year. We had interviews with Harley to the point that we started talking as if we had known each other for years. Then, finally, we adopted Harley. Upon adoption, Harley started calling us Daddy and Mommy. It was her initiative, but perhaps we made the perceptive Harley feel pressured. Harley was 8 years old when she became our child. Today, Harley graduated from university. Before welcoming Harley home, my father bought a grand piano. The grand piano placed in the living room is bathed in morning sunlight through the stained glass. The silhouette sitting there noticed me and slowly moved. "Good morning, Daddy." "Good morning. You're up especially early today." "I just woke up early for some reason." "Well, that makes sense. Today's your graduation day." "Harley, congratulations. You worked hard these past 4 years." Harley smiled shyly at my congratulatory words. She looked both happy and troubled, and I didn't know what expression to return. "Don't you need to get ready for the ceremony? You're wearing an academic gown and a graduation cap. You'd need to start preparing early in the morning, aren't you?" Natalie said. "Girls have a lot to do, like their makeup and stuff." "That's true, but I'd feel bad having the hairdresser come before 6 a.m. Harley shrugged and started playing When You Wish Upon a Star. It's not a calming choice for the morning, but come to think of it, I remember this was also the first song Harley played on this grand piano. It might be a song Harley wants to play at significant events of her life. I sipped my freshly brewed coffee and looked up at the wall clock in the living room. It was just past 5:30 a.m. Although it was bright outside, it was quiet, making the sound of Harley's piano playing seem even richer. There aren't many songs Harley, who had been fond of the piano even before coming to our home, can play. She never took piano lessons and has spent over a decade teaching herself with sheet music she occasionally buys. I showed Harley, who surely wanted to learn music, flyers for piano lessons many times, but she just kept shaking her head. Next month, Harley is joining the sales department of the company where I serve as a director in order to take over. I have a fresh memory of Natalie crying, "Don't say such a sad thing," when Harley laughed and said, "If you say a female Siat won't have prestige, I'll go on an arranged marriage anytime." Even now, if I close my eyes, I can vividly recall Harley's expression when she asked Natalie and me if we had a piano. We wished for Harley to pursue the future she wanted without hesitation. However, those feelings of ours never reached Harley, and she would just laugh and say, "The piano is just a hobby." Each time, Natalie would smile sadly. "Oh yeah, Daddy, here." Harley, who had returned after the graduation ceremony, handed me an envelope. My mood instantly sank as I took it. I could tell what was inside by the feel of it in my fingers. "It's a bit thick for a touching letter." When I said that, Harley laughed with a troubled look, lowering her eyebrows. "I could only save up for the 4 years of university days, so I don't know if it's enough, but I heard you bought this piano for me." "I didn't buy it. Besides, you were working part-time as a social learning experience. Use the money you saved for yourself. Do you plan to give your whole salary to the household when you become a working adult too?" I put the envelope on the table and slid it in front of Harley. There's no way I could accept this. As a parent, Harley put the envelope back in front of me. "Then let's go buy something you'll use for work with this." Talking about such expensive work tools in the hundreds of thousands range, the only thing that comes to mind is a car. Just as Harley compromised with a sigh, Natalie came with a tray. There were 3 coffee cups on the tray, each with steam rising from them. Natalie frowned and took the coffee from my hand, saying, "I told you to limit your coffee, didn't I? A car is something the company should buy as an expense, right? Then what about a car for personal use? I was thinking of buying that for you too. Isn't that a bit too overprotective? I'll never be able to become independent." Harley's words, mixed with laughter, made Natalie and my expressions freeze. "Someday, I'm going to leave this place too. Even me," Natalie said in a small voice. "That's right." I couldn't say anything. Even as I brought the cup to my lips and moistened my dry throat, I couldn't come up with a single clever thing to say. "Then, Daddy, since I don't think Harley knows what kind of car she wants either, why don't you go with her to the dealership?" Natalie said, holding Harley's hand. "After living together for over a decade, I guess you start to resemble each other." Harley and Natalie, side by side, were giving me the same kind of troubled eyes. A hoarse laugh bursts out from my phone with the speaker setting turned on. I didn't realize there were two women in the world who could play with Johnson, who was so popular in high school that he became a legend. Prince, who couldn't hold back his chuckling deep in his throat, said, "Thanks. I hadn't laughed this much in a long time," expressing gratitude for who knows what. Prince, who manages a car dealership, has been my childhood friend since elementary school. If I were to make a chronology of my life, I'd have to include Prince's name at every life event. That's how important Prince is in my life. Even now, Prince is the one in charge of all the company cars in our company, and even Natalie's and my personal cars were picked out by Prince. I was a little moved when he introduced a lineup of the best fuel-efficient cars before even asking my preferences, saying, "Johnson values practicality over appearance, right?" Of course, I consulted Prince when we took Harley in too. Only then did Prince scratch the back of his head without bringing his glass to his lips, saying, "This is something I can't say anything about. It's not about you and Natalie. This is about that Harley girl, right? Putting aside what kind of car Harley wants, is the price of the Grand P&O enough for the car you want to get her?" Prince asked in a teasing tone. "Considering the total amount you and Natalie have given Harley so far, a car is a cheap purchase. I can't deny that." At Prince's words, I started listing in my head all the things Natalie and I had given Harley. But Harley has never been happy about any of it. A bitter laugh unintentionally escaped me, making Prince let out a small groan. "In the first place, you didn't give Harley things she said she wanted, right?" "That's right. Even when we ask Harley what she wants, she won't tell us. Since Harley started high school, it's become like a game of wits out of desperation." Sounds like a fun family. Prince is laughing out loud, but it's not like such fun scenes played out. The family portrait of Harley smiling shyly, with Natalie and me wearing tired expressions as we tried to entertain her, must have been a terrible sight. Knowing you, Johnson, you tried to give her a car as a present and got turned down, right? It's frustrating, but I can't argue with that. Upon Harley becoming Natalie's and my child in 3rd grade, we enrolled her in the private school where I attended. The first time the word independence came out of Harley's mouth was in the fall of her 3rd year of middle school. From then on, Harley started using the word independence more and more frequently. But from Natalie and my perspective, we don't understand what Harley, who has never relied on us, is aiming for or what would lead to her independence. If we're only talking about financial matters, Harley could surely build a career at any other company. Once you graduate from university, you can already say you're independent. But Harley doesn't look satisfied. She even decided on her career path by herself before I could say anything, saying, "I want to learn at your company, Dad." She's never told us about having a hard time at school or her worries. I feel like she was mentally independent from the start. At the young age of 7 or 8, Harley's gonna leave this house someday without us being able to do anything for her. What did you most want to do for Harley, Johnson? Is it too late for that now? Or do you think it's about buying her a car, a vacation home, leaving her assets? Prince's voice was so gentle, it seemed like it would melt into the spring night. And yet, it concealed a thorn that somehow lingered in the depths of my ears. Most of all, I wanted to let her study music. "Oh." She gave you a wry smile and asked, "Why music, right?" Maybe that's Harley's true feelings. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe you're just thinking too much that Harley is holding back, but Harley doesn't actually intend to hold back at all." Did Harley ever actually say she wants to study music in the first place? From Harley's perspective, maybe she feels like you and Natalie are the ones putting up walls. I opened my mouth almost reflexively. I started to say, "That's not true," but I couldn't finish. "Johnson, why don't you let go a little?" I could imagine what kind of expression Prince had on the other side of the phone. He was probably lowering his usually dignified eyebrows, filling his face with the feeling of worrying about me with all his heart and soul. As I stayed silent, Prince suggested, "Let's try letting Harley choose the car first." "Wait, I promised to go with her." "You can spin that however you want, right? If she comes to my place, I'll take responsibility and take care of her, and I'll call you before the final decision." As I hesitated to respond, Prince added, "This is a social learning experience too," giving one more push. "Then, I'll just say hello when we visit your shop." I had no idea that reluctant response would affect our family's future. After hanging up the call, Prince immediately contacted me with his available dates. I saw Harley off as she went to Prince's dealership 3 times to match those dates. I didn't know there were so many types of 2-seater cars. I had no idea. The time came for me to step in when Harley had narrowed it down to 2 candidates. Harley, who said she was torn between 2 models, looked around the not-so-spacious store. It was a Saturday on a weekend that wasn't connected to a holiday. The consultation tables in the store were all filled. "You're the one who put this table in the store, right, Dad?" Harley said while stroking the marble pattern tabletop. "Prince said you picked out that bookshelf and the shoe rack at the entrance too," she said with a happy, proud smile. "When I took over the card company from my dad, Prince was also put in charge of one store at the company he worked for. How many years ago was it that I picked out the store's furniture at Prince's request, saying, 'I want to completely refresh the store's atmosphere.' I got it approved by the company. The table Harley and I are sitting at doesn't have a single noticeable scratch. There's no dust on the legs either. I can tell he's taking good care of it. Thank you for choosing us. I'm Brown, your sales representative." The coffee served by the receptionist had already started to cool. Just as I was thinking it's unusual for Prince to be late in greeting us, a young man I'd never seen before approached me and Harley. The young man handed me his business card, introduced himself again. "I'm Brown. I thought Prince was supposed to be in charge. The store manager, Prince, is busy with other matters. I apologize, but I will be in charge instead." Seeing Brown smile slowly, raising one corner of his mouth, I felt he had an unpleasant way of smiling. It's fine if Prince isn't in charge. If he made that call, I don't think there will be any issues. So, I'd like to move forward with our discussion. Harley spread out the brochure and a rough estimate she got last time and showed them to Brown. However, Brown put his hands in front of him, clearly rejecting talking with me. No, Mr. Johnson. I'm sorry, but I'm also in the middle of meeting with other customers right now. May I see you discuss the details some other time?" "So, what is it then?" "I'm terribly sorry, but could you please wait a bit longer? The car you're interested in is currently engaged in a test drive." Brown tilted his head and said, "Okay," as he straightened his collar, which looked like it was from a high-quality suit. I was running out of patience with his attitude and decided to leave the shop. As I put my hands on the table and was about to stand up with a lot of force, Harley stopped me. "Dad, the chair will fall over. It'll get scratched." I unintentionally stopped talking, because Harley, who said that, had such a sad look on her face. As if seizing that opportunity, Brown turned his back to us, saying, "Please take your time then. Dad, if you don't have time, should we come back next week?" "No, it's fine. I cleared my whole day for this." "Yeah, let's go for a test drive as suggested." I forcibly softened my cheeks that felt like they would stiffen, and showed Harley a smile. Even so, it was hard to fool Harley's perceptive eyes. Harley lowered her eyebrows with a worried look and let out a voice that seemed like it would disappear immediately, mixed with noise, saying, "Dad." Called by the receptionist, we headed to test drive one of the cars Harley was considering purchasing. On the way, we passed by Ethan, but he probably didn't notice us. He said, "Those who are poor come last." I don't know if that line was directed at us, but Harley hung her head and said, "I don't like salespeople who say things like that." We did 2 test drives. We discussed based on the rough estimate sheet on the table, and also considered the possibility of getting a different car while looking at the brochure. 5 hours had passed since Harley and I came to the shop, and 4.5 hours had passed since Brown came to greet us. Harley finished her 4th cup of coffee and said, "Sorry, Dad. I messed up the conversation." "Messed up the conversation? What do you mean?" Since Prince wasn't in charge, I didn't know what kind of conversation to have or how much I should talk. I was flustered, thinking I had to keep the company stuff under wraps and protect that at least, so I just talked about myself for the time being. Keep the company stuff under wraps. "So you doubt that Brown didn't know about me and the company?" Harley nodded, lowering her voice and saying, "Probably. But why do you have to apologize to me for that?" "Because Brown just called us poor people." Harley hung her head as she said that, but she was clearly angry. She furrowed her brow and pursed her lips. It was the first time I'd seen Harley with this expression. She never looked this indignant even when she was little. As if drawn by Harley's gaze, I also looked at Brown in the distance, who was probably in the middle of a sales pitch. To adopt a child, the receiving family needs to have financial leeway. To me, it was common sense knowledge. But for people who didn't encounter that kind of situation, it might be unnecessary common sense. Harley started staring at her empty teacup. "I'll go order another one for you." The voice I said that in might not have reached Harley's ears. "Hey, what's going on?" While Harley was on her third test drive, I called Prince. The fact that he answered within 3 rings made me feel that Prince really is a salesperson after all. Since Prince said he'd be in charge, I brought Harley. Right. If I said someone other than me would be in charge, you would have come along, Johnson. Prince let out a sigh and said in one breath, "Harley isn't a child you need to protect anymore. Listen, Johnson, don't butt in. This is something Harley needs to decide for herself. If things really start to go south, I'll do something about it. I'll take responsibility. Then why did you call me here today? Wanting to witness the moment your child grows up is just how parents are." The tense atmosphere from earlier completely changed with Prince's laugh. "It's kinda like a graduation ceremony," Prince added. Then after clearing his throat, he returned to a slightly more serious voice and said, "You know, Harley will have to overcome the barrier of being from a foster care facility with her own strength from now on. That's not a barrier. Up until now, no one has really said anything. Can you say for sure that they haven't? Harley's field of life is going to change. From a protected student to a business leader shouldering your company, Johnson. I heard that Harley's birth mother left her at the foster care facility because she didn't have the funds to raise her. I also heard from the director before we took Harley in that Harley knows this too." When I returned to my seat with the disconnected phone in one hand, a new cup of coffee had been delivered in front of Harley. "Harley, there's something I want to ask you." Harley, who was adding sugar from the sugar stick into her cup, let out a dissatisfied "what?" from her still pursed lips. "Have you been happy since coming to live with Natalie and me?" I thought about the barrier Prince mentioned. For example, I don't know what kind of eyes people like Ethan, who don't have the common sense knowledge about adoption that we do, will look at us with in the future. Maybe Harley has been navigating such curious eyes all along without telling us. Would Harley have been happier spending time at the facility with a tiny glimmer of hope in her heart, even if she couldn't go to her biological parents? Questions I'd never had before started swirling in my chest. Harley took a sip of her coffee and slowly cleared her throat. Then she gently relaxed her pursed lips. "It wasn't Natalie, but my biological mother who let go of me because she didn't have money, right? So I've never said it out loud because I was afraid it might cause misunderstanding, but misunderstanding. I didn't want people to think I'm happy with my life with my adoptive dad and mom because of your money." Moisture gradually welled up in Harley's eyes. Harley hung her head a little, took a deep breath, and laughed, saying, "It's weird to have a serious conversation in a place like this. It's thanks to you and Mom that I was able to realize that my biological mother giving me up was also out of love. You asked me over and over what I really want to learn, right? When you said a parent's happiness is letting their child learn what they truly want to learn, I thought, the person who gave birth to me probably let me go with the same feelings. But in the end, you haven't been able to learn what you want, Harley. About that, I don't actually want to learn piano. I just like it. Didn't you place importance on whether there was a piano or not? You must like piano that much, right?" Harley twisted her mouth, showing signs of choosing her words. "That's because," she said, looking up at the ceiling as if it was hard to say. "In the house where I lived with a woman who gave birth to me, there was only a toy piano. So I only knew how to spend time by touching the piano." I unintentionally lost my words. After spending so much time with Harley, hearing for the first time Harley's thoughts from when she was so young, a hot wave welled up from my heart. That changed too after meeting you and Mom. I learned that I can finish the day happily by drawing pictures at home, getting into mischief, getting scolded by Mom, and making crowns out of flowers without spending money. Harley laughed and said, "That's why." With a more grown-up smile than when we first met, she looked straight at me. I want to succeed the company because I respect the two of you who changed my life. The company cherished by two of you. That's my true feelings. I felt tears gather in my eyes all at once. It was when I took a handkerchief out of my breast pocket and put it to my eyes. Sorry to keep you waiting. Harley and I turned to the voice at the same time. Their study thin, exaggeratedly panting. Even though Brown was in the same air-conditioned store as us, he wiped his forehead with a handkerchief and seemed to be appealing that he was in a hurry, saying, "Sorry, I rushed here, but you know. Now then, shall we review our previous discussions?" Brown sat across from me, not Harley. "I heard about your family situation from your daughter. I prepared an estimate with options removed to keep the budget as low as possible." I was staring intently at Brown as he delivered his fluent sales pitch. That's probably what I was late to notice what kind of expression, feelings, and words Harley was preparing. "That's enough." Harley's calm voice stopped Ethan's talking. "What do you mean, that's enough?" "Exactly what I said. Dad, let's cancel the contract for 100 company cars too." "Huh? Harley, that deal is a contract with Prince, not Ethan. I'll find a more trustworthy dealership. It's dangerous to have a contract with a company that employs such a rude person." Although she spoke quickly, Harley wasn't showing her emotions outwardly like earlier. She wasn't childishly pursing her lips or furrowing her brow. Harley stood up while staring at Brown with a dignified expression. "You fail to realize that your words and actions have the potential to damage the company's reputation. I don't want to be assisted by someone like that." I couldn't close my mouth that had fallen open at the string of words I couldn't believe were coming from Harley's mouth. Harley had become a working adult before I knew it. Prince's words, "It's kinda like a graduation ceremony," echoed inside me. It clicked with a thud. This was probably my graduation ceremony too. I followed Harley's radiant back and went outside. Strangely, her back looked more refreshing than when I saw her in an academic gown last month. "Thank you." "For what?" "For getting angry for Natalie and me." Harley turned around, with the setting sun behind her, and gave me a V sign. "I regret not being there." Prince's cheerful laughter was so obvious, I could tell without seeing his face. Don't use a client to train your salespeople. Brown wasn't the only one I wanted to see grow. Thanks to that, Harley looks like a weight has been lifted off her shoulders. After returning home with Harley, I immediately called Prince, and he promised to be in charge from the next time. For our company too, Prince's store is an important client that makes big contracts with us regularly. We can't risk shaking up the company's management over a private matter. It's not that I don't understand Harley's point, but if the problem is only with Ethan, we just need to have Prince change who's in charge. However, I could tell right away from Prince's voice when he answered the phone. This was a once-in-a-lifetime big stage set up by Prince. He deliberately put a salesperson who would be concerned about Harley's background in charge. And he laid the groundwork with the other employees so that Brown wouldn't find out about my and Prince's relationship. He would keep track of the progress of the negotiation through Brown and change who was in charge before it became a big deal. Prince must have thought that would work. You think it's only Harley's graduation? I know. I won't try to overprotect Harley anymore. It might be too late. But when I said that with a big sigh, Prince said in an unusually soft voice, "It's never too early or too late." Not that I'm in any position to act high and mighty, though, as a best friend, there's nothing that makes me happier than being able to create a moving stage where I can feel Harley's growth. Prince's voice began to tremble. Prince's line, "Now everyone can relax and become a family," made my heart feel warm too. Thanks, Prince. The person who deserves the most credit is probably Natalie. I hung up the phone with Prince and headed to the living room. There, I saw Natalie and Harley, happily making dinner. The moonlight streaming in through the stained glass illuminated the piano. I felt from the bottom of my heart that I was the happiest man in the world right now. I'm not gonna trade it in after just 2 years. Harley, who said that to Brown across our home's low table, had grown quite resilient as a business leader. Brown, who was brought by Prince to apologize right away 2 years ago, must have also grown as a salesperson. His facial expression was completely different. Today, Prince and Brown came to pitch a new car. "Dad, why do you keep a contract with a person like this?" "Prince is fine," But perhaps because we're not at the company. Harley pursed her lips and spoke in a more childish tone than usual. Harley's attitude toward Brown has been like this since he came to apologize with Prince 2 years ago. However, seeing as she hasn't turned him away, Harley probably doesn't completely despise Brown deep down. I was immature back then, but look at me now. Brown stared at Harley with eyes filled with so much passion, it made me embarrassed to watch. I gave Natalie a look. Natalie shrugged and interjected between the two, saying, "Brown is still unreliable, but Harley is an adult now too." 2 years ago, independence was Harley's pet phrase. Since then, neither Natalie nor I have brought up Harley's independence. We weren't confident we could accept it with a smile. But now, it'll be okay. Natalie must have thought so too. Harley looked back and forth between my and Natalie's faces. Then, she hung her head. "Let me stay with you and Mom a little longer," Harley mumbled, turning away. Tears welled up in Natalie's wide-open eyes. Natalie and I walked up to Harley in unison and said, "Of course."